more than happy with that.
Yep, and we have our first match on hand. It is going to be the mid-range druid from Zhangbo here going against the control warrior of Zoro. And that's the first time I've seen his Ysera. He's gotten by with his control warrior thus far. I don't think he's lost with it yet, but I haven't seen that Ysera. So it looks like he's gone with a bit of a greedy build here and has double fire war axe, which is decent against the double palace rider in the hand of Zhangbo.
Yeah, and it's just the thing I keep bringing up. Do we know if there's aspirants in the deck here? Because that makes such a difference in this matchup. If the druid has aspirants, it becomes far less easy for the druid to win. But most of the Chinese players have.
I seem to remember that he does have aspirants. I don't think we've really seen a deck without one. And the reason why that's pretty important for those of you who are unaware, in the Western scene, a lot of players have been cutting aspirants because it makes it so that the druid is pretty weak against control decks if you have those aspirants, because it allows them to get killed off pretty quickly, and you're not able to kind of put that pressure on normally. Obviously, it helps a lot against aggro decks, but if you're not facing too many aggro decks, then you kind of feel like you need to cut them.
And the tournament has been full of aggro decks, in fairness. So the aspirant build does seem like it is the correct build. I just thought I'd bring up the question as those two fiery war axes with nowhere to go. They're just sitting there, pretty much borderline wasted cards in his hand at the moment.
Right.
That's actually pretty cool to see, just because against a lot of decks you try to get that early board coverage, which is where Fiery War Axes are so strong. But against a ramp deck here like Druid, you kind of skip that early phase, limit the effectiveness of those Fiery War Axes, and get your curve a little bit ahead of schedule.
We see an Innervate come into the hand of Zhangbo, which means he has a really tough decision on hand. I mean, without this Innervate, it was basically, you coin a Shredder, you play a Shredder, you play your 5 jobs after that. But now he has a lot of decisions to make, and looks like he's going to start off with this Druid the Claw, just to be the most beefy minion possible. Zoro can kill it off with Fire War Axe as well as his Cruel Taskmaster into the Armor Smith.
Now, what's interesting about this is, as far as the Innervate usage, like, against a Control Warrior matchup, you're going to have some issues. Like, later on down the line, Druids win a lot of their games with combos. Well, if you save your Innervate for later on, so what if the Warrior gets, a ton of armor? You can set up for things like, Emperor turns that are going to allow you to Innervate out 1,000,000,000 damage. So it's
Roughly.
super good later on, too, but it's also good to establish early board control.
Yeah, interesting to me that he chose to put the 4/6 down. To me, that suggests he may have worked out that maybe the War Axe is stuck in hand, because Zoro did keep one of those War Axes, I think, in his mulligan, and he hasn't played it. So you're thinking, well, what's he kept in his mulligan that he hasn't played till turn 5? And yeah, I think he may have worked out there that was actually better for him than putting down one of the Shredders.
Well, if you play the Sludge Belcher, then it basically just dies to 1 Death Bite, whereas if you play the Druid Claw, it obviously doesn't. And on top, you need a specific set of cards in order to deal with that Druid Claw. Unfortunately for him, Zoro did have that, and we have a Cruel Taskmaster off. But unfortunately for Zhangbo, Zoro's is golden.
Yeah, the golden one, and having the advantage of going first, yeah, that Taskmaster is winning this fight. Plus, he doesn't care if he loses the fight, being the control deck.
So good. So good. Like, I want to start off all of my tournament games that way. It's, unfortunately, the goldenness of cards only matters up into a certain point. Although weapons, having those early, that does actually matter a lot. So Zoro's got a pretty classically strong early game, but now he has to work against a Druid that's going to be playing a little bit ahead of schedule.
Right, and this is basically what you want. This is why Druid has always been seen as favored against Control Warrior, because of what you see from Zhangbo right here. Just minion after minion after minion, and even though Warrior excels at dealing with these kind of minions, when they come back to back to back to back, you're eventually going to run out of stuff, and then at that point you're taking 4 to 5 damage every single turn, sometimes even more if there's 2 minions there.
Yeah, and you're not getting 2 for 1 out of your weapons a lot of the time either, because of how beefy the Druid minions are, and so normally you get your card advantage as the control deck by, go for 1 with your spells, go 2 for 1 with your weapons, and then drop some bits and pieces that they can't deal with. But with Druid, their guys are so big that your weapons don't go 2 for 1 anymore.
Right, but if you do have Gorohal, then maybe you can go 7 for 1 in this particular
I think he's going to
case.
need to try that, right? That's something
I think you have to do it. I mean, we see him. I guess this is okay because you're developing the Shield Maiden. It's kind of important to get a minion on the field, and then from there you can pressure your opponent by killing off all the stuff with Gorohal, and you have that consistent Shield Maiden on the field. But yeah, it's really hard for me to see a chance to pass up Gorehal. But he can play it this turn.
7 for 1 with Gorehowl. That means that you get it all the way down to that like
The
lights
nub.
justice. Yeah, where you're like, I got this one attack Gorehowl coming straight for your face. That's when you upgrade it to a 2/2, and you're like, oh my goodness, so
Upgrade.
good.
Yeah, the thing, if you didn't know, if you actually get down to 0, you can't attack. You physically can't do so. And a Succubus comes up, which is really good here
Wow.
for Zhangbo, because now he basically gets the hero power down the Shield Maiden. If it was something even like a Totem Golem, then it would be perfectly fine for Zoro.
And look at the
Right.
card difference.
Oh, go ahead.
No, just look at the card difference. Like we've got 6 cards in hand versus 1, and a head on board. And he hasn't even. It's not been obvious where those cards have come from. It's just generally just wearing down the warrior without even having to have the combo or the finish. He's just winning the game without doing anything.
Right. I mean, the Fiery War Axe plus, Armor Smith goes into the Drew the Claw, and then you have the Ancient of Lore, and then the Sludge Belter took a lot of stuff, just back to back to back. It's been very, very difficult here for Zoro to keep up with, and now you see the pressure coming in from Zhangbo. He has combo in hand right now, but I imagine even if he didn't have combo, he'd probably be doing this just to put the fear of God in Zoro right now.
Yeah, I think he could have traded there just to sort of negate the effects of a lucky brawl because he's so far in front that maybe that was a thing I would have done. But he's fine going to face here. He's setting up lethal in all sorts of different ways, and he's basically saying the opposite. If you haven't got the way of clearing now, I just win the game. So
Right.
it also negates the fact of the Gorehowl to have 3 things facing down the opponent. So.
Yeah, so Zoro here, he might have just used that slam to cycle because he has extra mana after he brawls and attacks and, re-armors up here. He could also be considering using that Revenge right now as well, which can allow him to clear the board, but, I mean,
I'm not. That's kind of interesting though, because if he was going to use Revenge, then what you want to do is hit into the 4/4, so that then you can Revenge for 3 and kill off both of the remaining minions, right?
Oh, he had to be 12 or lower.
Would that not? Okay, yeah, that puts him to 14. I was like, man, he's not taking enough damage. Needs to take more. But here comes this brawl. It's a Shield Maiden, not an Armor Smith. So there's no guarantee it comes out. And of course, what wins is the 4/4, probably the best minion on the board at that point.
Right, and we saw him armor up here. That's technically, a misplay, but he didn't have time. The rope was burning, so he needed to make sure that he got that in. That's why you saw that at the very end there. So I did armor up and then was able to get the kill, but this is looking so bad. This is a Control Warrior's worst nightmare. Just Ancient of Lore after Ancient of Lore. Your opponent has 7, soon to be 8 cards in hand. You know there's combo in there. There's no playing around it anymore. There's no hoping. This game is just looking really bad.
Right, and without Lotheb too, you're going to be taking the combo eventually. No way to stop it. No way to keep that from coming down, and here we go, Sludge Belcher. That's gonna have to be the sludgiest of Belchers. Gonna have to have some pretty big. I see Sludge Belcher and I think it's a taunt, but then I think, wait, it's called a Sludge Belcher, so it's literally just a pile of sludge that just belches stuff all over. That is
Well,
disgusting.
If you think of the literal definition of taunt, right? Taunting someone, I mean, how could you not get distracted by just sludge belching all over the place? How can you even ignore that and attack Magni when there's just stuff sludge belching all over the place? I mean, I kind of agree with that, with the way that's called there. But,
Just to pick up what you said about his turn where he was roping there from Zoro, that's a really important point that he knows that you armor up afterwards normally, but he just wanted to make sure that everything went through, and it's such a small technical thing, but he's worked out that he just needs to do the things. Doesn't matter what order these things happen. Just press the button that's nearest, get everything pressed, and make sure that you get the maximum out of your turn. A lot of players sort of think, oh, let's get this exact 0.001% thing correct, and then don't finish the turn because of it.
Exactly. By the way,
That's
I think he's dead. I don't think there's anything he could possibly do
Yeah,
here. If he kills a Sylvanas, he's giving away a slime at the very best, right? Obviously, otherwise he's giving away his Sludge Belcher. Sludge Belcher, by the way, is one of the best things at stopping combo. You only let 4 damage through, but gonna give away his slime here. I don't know if he might bash it as well, and so he takes less damage from this slime. But yeah, he's gonna be going down a bit in health here. And actually, no, wait. My mistake. He's still alive because the Bash was able to heal him up just quite a bit. If he leaves his slime here, though, it's an issue. But he's actually going to go to, let's see, 17 health. So my mistake. He isn't quite dead. Wow, a Stampede and Coda. Was not expecting that card.
What is that card doing in there? Man, that's in place of those Raven idols, you know?
Right. There's
Just going back to something you said about the Asira at the start as well. We don't know this Asira is in the deck, so presumably nobody knows it's in. So he really shouldn't put this on the table right now.
I mean, yeah, looks like he's just going for the YOLO Ysera, right? Hopefully my opponent doesn't have combo, and maybe this Ysera can single-handedly win the game, but we know the game is over, unfortunately.
I guess it's not over enough from his side. The Druid sometimes just doesn't draw stuff, so I guess you have to put it down, but it was borderline for me as a pretty big surprise card.
Right. So there it is. Zhangbo takes game number 1 with his Druid. A good pick to start this match off. Was able to get that. We saw him in the last best of 5 series in which he played in the semifinals. Started off with kind of a tumble with his Patron Warrior going against the Reno Lock of Lovely Chook. So good to see him get off to a good start. As for Zoro, needs to start coming back here.
And just confused by this Murloc situation, I'm afraid. Scares me.
Tiddler loves his Murlocs, man. Anyway.
Yeah, a lot of love for those Murlocs. He's hugging them up. What is that on the other side of the desk, though?
I think people have referred to it as an Abathur. Abathur hat, I mean, in Heroes of the Storm.
Okay. Well, go for it. Yeah, that's actually exactly what it is. It's just I'm not familiar enough with my my Blizzard hats game to correctly identify that. But,
I mean, when we'll be on to the hats game symbiote next season, right? We'll all have that sorted. We'll know the hats.
I mean, when I say
having a Hearthstone hat for every card.
Sorry, for those of you who don't know Heroes of the Storm, when Abathur, he has this ability called symbiote, and he basically enhances your heroes, and that's what it looks like when he does so, and we just call it a hat because symbiote sounds, it takes too long to say. Anyway, we have the Patron Warrior of Zhangbo going against the Control Warrior of Zoro. And I'm actually a bit surprised that Zoro tossed away the Justice card. That's usually how you just win the game, is you get enough armor and your opponent can't kill you. But I guess this is kind of a tempo game, I suppose. Basically, you lose this game. Now that there's a different, obviously, Warsong Commander, you're not allowed to charge and do a billion damage to your opponent. What you do if you're the Control Warrior is basically just hold off every single minion. You just get rid of every single minion, don't fall behind in tempo, and your opponent cannot kill you.
Yeah, the opponent still has some threats, slightly more than they had in the combo version, but they don't have the threat of winning the game out of the blue. And obviously that's gigantic, so you just pick off the Patrons, pick off the Frothings, and take your chance with the Kokon Elites and any other mid-range stuff that might come your way. Keep your armor above sort of 17 or more life, just as a magic number for Grommash and double Inner Rage, and then you're just pretty much sailing away. And he's got a Harrison, which is going to make it even more difficult.
Exactly. What do you do if you're Zoro here, though? I mean, it's kind of risky to go for the coin Despite. You do turn this Frothing Berserker into a 4/4, but on the other hand, sorry, well, not a 4/4, it would be maybe a 5/3, I think? No, it would still be a 4/3. My mistake. Anyway, but this early in the game, I can't imagine you're taking too much damage from the simple Frothing Berserker, particularly because, worst case scenario, you have Cruel Taskmaster plus Shield Slam. I mean, you can, or even plus the Inner Rage, so probably not a big deal. I think you can go ahead and play the Despite here.
Yeah, I think you'd rather kill it off than let it potentially have some strange... You don't want it to hit you for 8 twice or something if something bad happens here.
Right, but I don't think that's really possible unless your opponent uses all of the resources, and then by that time...
I think you don't mind.
Yeah, you're fine with that, so... Interesting play, just securing its kill the next turn, and before Finley Murgleton is able to heal it, but anyway, that's not going to be happening, obviously, this turn. And Zhangbo has really nothing to do right here. All of his cards in his hand are very situational. It'd be nice if he can get something like a Patron to be able to utilize those cards, but we also see the Brawl in the hand of Zoro, so things not starting out too well for Zhangbo even now. And doesn't armor up because he wants to be able to Battle Rage later.
And this is another problem that Patron has in this matchup. The Patron combo, or the Patron board fill as it probably now is a little bit slow. and it doesn't mind being slow because the rest of its cards are controlling the onslaught of 1/1 paladin tokens or whatever's coming. When you're playing against control, they're not putting anything down there for you to use those cards on. So something like a whirlwind, which you want for the combo, but you use as control, it just sits there and does nothing. So you don't get any sort of traction.
Right, this is so sad for Zhangbo here. He didn't even armor up because obviously he wants to get that battle rage for the future. Feels like a rogue with, deadly poison on the dagger and just can't do anything, just pass it over. Or maybe even a priest, right, just can't do anything. And I just feel sorry for Zhangbo right now. Though he is up one game in the series, so I can't feel too bad.
Yeah, and so far, though, I mean, that if assuming that I'm already assuming he might well lose this game. It's looking like just the matchups so far have been the deciding part of the first two games, which is, of course, something they had to decide in the top 8 was what lineup they were going to bring.
Exactly, and we talked about this a couple times, but you know, with the lineups, what they were doing in the group stages is largely what they've done in the round of 8. Zoro had a bit of a change, and so did Zhangbo. Some of these players had changed a bit, but for the group stages, they wanted decks that were able to defeat a wide variety of opponents and have a general strategy, whereas in the round of 16, they were allowed for one round to change their decks, which means that players kind of mind game their opponent and play to their opponent, and now we see them switching back. I mean, I say now, but basically from the start of the round of 8. So a lot of well-rounded decks here from both players, and Zoro just playing patiently here, didn't want to have to deal with that Armor Smith. One of the executes already being used by Zhangbo, so again, just an uphill battle. If Zoro picks up any sort of big minions, say that your Sarah that we saw earlier in the game, then it would start the beginning of the end. Right now, he's a nice clean kill on the Sludge Belcher. Let's see what he goes for.
I guess his issue, if there is an issue with his hand, is just that there's not much he can do while he's waiting. It's looking like he's just going to go for the Sylvanas to get something on the board, as he's got so many answers to all the things anyway.
Right.
Maybe just put a little bit of pressure down. That would make sense to me, because you want to hold on to Harrison, you're holding on to your Brawl, you're holding on to basically all those cards you can see there, so you might as well play the Sylvanas, because when is it going to get any use in the next sort of 5 or 6 turns anyway?
Exactly. And maybe you think your opponent's itching to play some sort of patron turn or something like that, and it's very difficult to take out the Sylvanas, especially behind a taunt. Nothing you can really do in this particular case. And if you're trading for one Despite swing as well as the Slime, which could get annoying, so I think you're perfectly fine with this. And you're probably just going to see the Harrison come out here.
All right.
Yeah,
well, nothing too crazy. As far as either player getting off to the dream start. But I guess you didn't really expect to see anything too crazy from a control warrior. It's just like, hey, I'm going to play my supervision card this turn, and another one next turn, and kind of the same deal over and over again. But I don't know. Who do you favor here? Because it's still going to be a little bit unfortunate to kill off everything but the Harrison Jones.
Right. I mean, Zoro's in a pretty heavy lead here. It's really looking bad for Zhangbo. I mean, just look at the hand sizes right now. And not only that, basically, it's up to the patron to kill the control warrior, right? If the hand sizes were reversed, it would be even, I would say. But since they're the way they are now, I would say Zoro's in a pretty fantastic lead.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason that Harrison is so destructive there, for those who don't quite know this matchup, it's not destructive there, but normally, it's like the one piece of tempo you've got. You set up a free whirlwind the next turn into your patrons, which he's now got set up into a patron. But the fact Harrison can just take that away, which is why Zoro will have done it, he doesn't need the card or to get rid of the weapon. In his mind, he's looking at the patron, Inner Rage puts 2, the Despite comes in and doubles them. If you Harrison that sort of to scupper your opponent's plans, you tend to just win the game. It may have looked a little bit odd to some people, which is why I mention it.
Right, and Garong comes out, so that eliminates any sort of burst coming out from Zhangbo at any point. The only way he can ever really try to win this game is if he puts patrons on the field and hopes his opponent doesn't have an answer. But we see now there's 2 answers, and that Ysera's Awakens and the Brawl. Yeah. And I think it's just going to be the patron hitting the field, and once it's cleared up, it's probably going to be a concede from Zhangbo.
Yeah, the Awakens there is pretty disgusting when the reason that Priest does so well in this matchup is it has so many board clears, and the one chance you've got against the Warrior is that he doesn't have great board clears. And so Awakens just fixed that problem if there was any doubt at all what was going to happen here.
Wow, super all in. Just, this is my only chance. I'm gonna play all 3 whirlwinds. Got all 7 patrons on the board. Gonna even actually turned into 6, obviously, since the other one died off. But like I mentioned, I think there's gonna be concede right here after Zoro clears this off.
Yeah, there's no way back.
Certainly isn't going to be very long after this gets cleared off. There, this is like super hellfire. With,
the super hellfire, get him Awakens. Yeah, and it costs 2 mana to deal 5 damage to everything. It's pretty nice. That's why they call it the Dream card. So Shield Maiden hidden in the field. And, I mean, this is the final, so maybe you keep going just for posterity's sake, right? I mean, no one's going anywhere. You might as well play it out. So Zhangbo knows, though. I mean, Zhangbo's playing this out. This is the Marine King GG timing, but he knows that this is basically over.
He's got a pretty scary board, D2. I don't know about that.
I mean, you could just brawl this if you're Zoro. I guess it would be a little bit too risky. You've already seen both whirlwind effects as far as the actual whirlwind. You've seen Unsable Gold, you've seen both Deathbite, so it's actually kind of impossible to even make patrons for now. And I guess if you got a Surf in the Morgleton, but this is insane. He just, goes for the shield block, has so many things to do right now. 12 cards left for Zoro and 11 left for Zhangbo. That actually surprises me quite a bit. I figured that Zoro would be not as far into his deck, although we do see he has a full grip of hands or full grip of cards.
Yeah, one thing that makes a bit of sense here is it's easier to just draw your cards and slap them on the table than it is to use brain power to actually work out, can I even win this game? What combination of cards win me this game? It's like saving energy, not wasting it, to just keep picking up a card and slap it on the table here. You don't want to go home and have somebody say, you had a 1% chance if you drew X into Y into Z. You'd rather just do it. I think that's fair.
So, do you think he's thinking about the next game, perhaps, and how he's going to defeat the future decks and what he's going to mulligan for, perhaps?
It's really important, actually, because he's got this Patron Warrior, and he's going to play against either Paladin or Druid next. And, that's a match that's... he's probably thinking, do I do that, or how does my Shaman interact? Do I want to get the Shaman out of the way and put the Patron into just one of those decks, and so on and so on. So there's quite a lot to work out there, and he's probably just using his time to do that, whilst just making sure that there is nothing he's forgotten in his deck that might do something under the pressure. And
full disclosure, I mean, we've had matches where we called it over, and it was, somehow the other player managed to get some crazy come from behind win, but just looking at this, it's the only way that Zhangbo could possibly win. There's a counter in Zoro's hand right now, so it's just really hard to see.
I guess he's thinking, if I set up a second lot of patrons, and if there's no brawl, removal, blah 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 in Zoro's hand, and if they hit him twice somehow,
and if Zoro falls out of his chair, and
maybe because I've got a battle rage, something happens. But I suspect he's just going through the motions to save the effort of actually working out if there's a way he can win. Like, why work that out? Why use that brain power?
Right. I'm actually a bit surprised that. Well, I guess it's not too big of a deal. Zhangbo could actually use his hero power to draw cards, strangely enough, by obviously fire blasting his own minion, which I think he'll do here. I was a bit confused why he played the Morgleton first rather than getting double hero power, but I guess this is why.
There's also the thing, I mean, he is in an unfamiliar situation. Maybe he's just taking the time to get a feel for sitting in that chair in front of the people, in the box, just settle his nerves a little bit, ready for the next game.
Well, this won't settle his nerves to see this frothing berserker book, but right, the fireworks is in his hand, or it's equipped right now. It just doesn't seem like it. He's checking the sidebar, making sure. Yeah, I did equip that fireworks, right? And yeah, we see that. I mean, Garrosh does have 3 attack right now. But,
what is happening?
That was absolutely bizarre.
I have actually never seen that bug before.
No.
Okay. Well, there you go. I mean, best case scenario, he's got 3 attack permanently forever and doesn't need a weapon, right?
Maybe he gets 6 attack next turn and it happens again.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine a weapon that did that? Like, you played it, and then you could play it next turn again and again, and you just kept getting bigger and bigger. Isn't there a boss battle?
Yeah.
Oh, no, isn't there a boss battle where you have a weapon that does that, where like each turn it keeps getting bigger and bigger?
If you
I think I
thought of it,
remember.
there probably is. If not, you
Eh,
should send it in right now. That's a
No,
really good idea.
well, hey, I mean, we've got it. We've got evidence, Lorinda. It's actually here. Brawl's a pretty good card, but unfortunately, not
Oh
the.
wait, okay. Well, apparently there's an issue with Zhangbo's computer where there was a bit of deceit. It looks like, and we're looking at Zoro's perspective right now. It looks like he killed off the slime with his face and killed off the 2/4 with his Grumish, and yeah, so looks like there has been
Zhongbo's like, hey, redo.
yeah. I mean, if you're the admin of this tournament, it would
You
be
can't
really
give him
weird to do a redo of this game. This game
He's,
could not have been more over.
but he's
Are
going
they
to ask
really
him.
redoing it?
No,
I think
but
they
he's
are.
asking.
I think they
And
are going to redo it.
and we're all going to look really silly for saying why is he playing on? Because if that does win him, I suspect the admins would rule that there's not enough ways to win the deck from the hand.
It's
Um,
impossible, right? I mean, you have Justicar. He has Justicar in hand. He has Execute in hand. He has a board lead with a Garamish.
But you can't just at what point do admins just like step in? It's like, all right, all right, all right, we figured it out. You can't win anymore. Like you
Well,
gotta
it's.
let them try.
I mean,
you know what's in his deck.
you
You know what's in
can't.
Zoro's hand.
There's no way, right? Because Zoro has Brawl. You're never going to develop patrons. I guess the one thing you could possibly do, I suppose, since the only weapon in the hand of Zoro was that Gorahal, was that you couldn't Brawl and Gorahal on the same turn, so maybe you just perpetually have more patrons because of the mage hero power. But then if you get him down low enough, he still has that revenge. So it's just so hard to find a situation where okay, looks like okay. I'm sorry. Now I'm like covering my eyes trying to think right now, but it looks like they have ruled that it is a win for Zoro. I mean,
Yeah.
basically we were waiting for Zoro to put Zhangbo out of his mystery, so I'm actually very happy about that ruling. I know
Agree entirely.
it seems bad. I mean, if you don't have lethal on the board, then sometimes it seems unfair. But I just can't even imagine a scenario in which Zhangbo wins that. There was a BGH in hand for the Doctor Boom. It's I don't.
My
I
only
mean,
concern with it is how quickly they made the decision. I think the decision is right. I think that if somebody's, it's not 99%, it's 99.xx with a base level of Hearthstone. Like if a rank 15 player or whatever who doesn't play much could find the win, and it's there on the screen, you can't say the pro player is going to miss it. And that was as simple a Hearthstone win as you could get from there. Like you say, the only way he could win would be to make the Frothing Berserker so big that it had to be dealt with the brawl, and then make
well,
some patrons.
he already killed the Frothing Berserker though with the Grom.
Oh, the Frothing had died, had it? Okay,
Yes.
then then there's nothing left. Sorry, it was still on my screen at some point there. Okay, so then there was nothing left. So I
Well,
think he actually conceded anyway.
Yeah, it was stuck on. Yeah, maybe Zhangbo. Oh, you know what it probably was? It was probably Zhangbo who said that there was no way I was winning that. I was just playing it out, but it would just be kind of unfair if that happened.
Which is a good idea, by the way, because you don't want to be playing. Let's say he went and gone, did the redo, went 2-0 up. That sort of thing really plays on your mind if you're any sort of character.
Right. I mean, it also could affect his streaming career going forth, right? Because obviously he's gaining a lot of popularity, a lot of players, a lot of people voted for him to win this game. And so if you pull off something like that, that might hurt you in the future quite a bit.
Definitely, yeah. Sportsmanship actually is pretty good these days in most events, I think, in esports anyway.
Well, we are getting into this matchup between the Patron Warrior and the Druid. This is known as a good matchup for the Patron Warrior. However, we've seen Druid take quite a bit of matches in this format. And Zhangbo with an interesting decision between the Priest and the Mage. If you go for the Mage, it makes developing your patrons very easy. But if you go for the Priest, it makes keeping those patrons alive very easy as well. And goes for the Warlock. Wow. Interesting.
Goes to
Those-
Warlock, wants
they-
those cards.
Yeah, definitely. Card draw. I think one of the strongest, or one of the most important facets of the Patron Warrior deck, just because you need to get your combos all ready to go as soon as possible. Unfortunately, rather, we don't see any patrons in hand.
I think if he knew he was going to draw that Acolyte, he wouldn't have gone for Warlock because, I mean, between the Gnomish Inventor and the Acolyte of Pain, it just seems really painful to go for that when you had two hero powers that support patrons.
and you can't go too low against Druid, or the Druid does that Druid thing to you and kills you for 14 damage in one turn.
He
You do have to play a
druids you
little
into
bit.
submission. I
You
hate
do have to
getting
be a little
druided.
bit sensible, but I think he hated his hand there, and that's why he went for it.
Right. Well, unfortunately for him, he's going to be having to tap himself out of a lot of this stuff, and Dr. Boom hits the field right away. Ooh, Execute is nice, though.
Yeah, and like you say, even though this is favoured for the patron, it doesn't have much control over the Druid when the Druid starts getting rolling, if it hasn't got the 4 patrons or the Execute and so on going on. So it is possible for the Druid to win this. It's not as one-sided a basic matchup as the previous 2 games we saw.
Right. Do you go for the? I feel like you go for the Cruel Taskmaster right here, just to get something on the board and develop something.
Yes.
Instead of going for the slam, I mean, you can always just hero power for more cards if you need it. And looks like a bomb goes for 4 to the face, which
Ooh.
is pretty painful if you're Zhangbo, because outside of the armor smith, you have no way of gaining armor from here on out.
Yeah, with no armor smith and no life gain, suddenly you're sitting looking over your shoulder every time your opponent gets, well, as soon as your opponent gets to 9 mana, and even on 7 a little bit, you start sort of twitching a bit. And if this Emperor comes down, it's going to be really interesting to see how Zhangbo actually approaches not, in his mind, not losing to combo in this game.
Right, well, we see the Sylvanas come out pretty nice here for Zoro, because there's going to have to be just a trade in for everything. Don't want to give anything away. And even actually 1 more damage has to be dealt here. Going to commit this slam, it seems like. I feel like you could just... Well, I guess you can't go for the patrons this turn because you couldn't play the Whirlwind or else to give away a patron.
Right.
But Zhangbo a bit indecisive here.
Personally, I think I would personally get this weapon on the go, because you've got 2 of them and they're cluttering up your hand, and it's handy with the patron anyway.
Right.
And
I mean, next turn,
what's this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he wants the unseeable goal on the field right now, because either his opponent deals with it, or you get 6 patrons next turn, which is obviously kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I just think that maybe because of your low life total, you'd possibly want this on turns 8 and 9 rather than turn 7. But for your opponent, that is, it's your turn 5.
Right.
Good old Druid.
Wow, Execute is
Oh
huge
my
here.
gosh.
Wow.
That's a pretty good card.
Yeah, I would say so. So he's going to go for the Execute. Does he go for the Coin Whirlwind as well? Getting 6 guys on the board is pretty difficult to deal with, obviously.
Yeah, and Druid nowhere near. I mean, you're not about the low life total, but 23 with nothing on board is suddenly not a low life total anymore, because
Exactly.
the Druid has to do something about this, and it's just... The Druid's weakness is that it can't do good AoE damage. The strength is it can do mediocre AoE damage with strong minion backup, but...
And looks like we were a bit wrong about Zhangbo going for the Warlock Hero Power. To be fair, he only used it once, I believe. So there's that.
But it was once that's got him to where he is, because it tapped him into his easier ways to control the board, which has allowed him to set this situation up.
Right. I guess, if you get patrons against Drew, you win the game. So he was thinking, as long as I get my patrons, as long as I get 2 of the patrons, I should be fine. And we see that's what's happened here. And for Zoro, what does he do? I think you have to race, right? I mean, as crazy as it sounds, you're taking, obviously there's 18 damage on the board. That's 36 over 2 turns. So maybe you can kill your opponent by then.
Yeah, actually, yeah. That's the thing, right? You just smash him in the face here.
Right, so it looks like he's going for... I mean...
Double combo?
Yeah, but you
Is
can't...
he trying to top deck double combo?
But you can't top deck it because it's going to cost 3. And you're going to have 9 mana next turn.
So he has to find a way to survive 2 turns and double combo.
Cross your fingers, hope your Darnassus lives? I mean... Well, he is, saving himself a lot of grief here. A lot of damage on his face, and he maybe won't be able to take two turn lethal. So what Zoro's saying is that if you leave these guys alive, I can kill you. So you need to kill my guy. So therefore you won't. Therefore you don't have 2 turn lethal, and maybe I can get 3 turn lethal.
Yeah, and there's some other bits and pieces. I suspect Twilight Azure Drake is kind of not terrible here for somehow as well. Oops.
Right. So he plays the frothing a bit late, but I don't know if that's that much of a mistake.
Playing round BGH, right?
Right, exactly. The BGH would be pretty painful to deal with potentially if you see. I mean, combo can clear here because you can combo, hit the 3 patrons, and BGH the Frothing Berserker. So that might actually be the play right now.
Combo clear. Excuse me. Yes, that would be the play. And when you do that quite often against Warrior, you do buy yourself a lot of time. He doesn't know there's going to be a Grom, of course. He's just got to take the chance that the Grom's not there.
Right.
And I think you're right. I think he has to clear here with the combo.
And he unfortunately doesn't have the mana to go into the Innervate and Shredder after the BGH, which is unfortunate for him. Can't really develop.
This is how Druid used to win against
Exactly.
Patron, right? It would just get rid of the 4 things and the 2 patrons and say that's it. But now it's not it anymore because there's slightly more stuff.
Right.
And
So we have probably this Grom coming up here because of the fact that you don't really run double BGH in Druid these days. I guess you could go for the Gnomish and the Frothing Berserker, but yeah, just hit your opponent in the face for 10. Let's just go. Let's do this.
so yeah, now solve this problem, and also I've got all this stuff in my hand that's going to give you more problems. Like it's 2 turn lethal just with 2 hits from those 2 weapons.
Wow,
basically.
Harrison's a bit late. A bit late to the party.
Museum is closed, boys.
Exactly. That belongs in it. Harrison, go home. You're drunk.
So,
Yeah, Zoro, he doesn't have any way to clear this. He can't kill his own Shredder for taunts or healing, so that's going to be game.
yeah, it's going to be 2-1 down with just Shaman needing the win for Zhangbo, which will be. I haven't seen it. I assume it's just a facey Shaman deck. That's what they all are now.
That's what they all are. If you're specifically bringing a Shaman to a tournament and it's not that, then you might want to rethink your priorities.
Or you're a genius.
Maybe. He has gotten
There's
this
only
far.
2 choices, right?
Right, I suppose. Anyway, it is going to be the Shaman left for Zhangbo. Is going to be going off against the Druid and the Paladin of Zoro. Let's see if Zhangbo can continue his Cinderella story, actually finish off the book on his Cinderella run and take the championship, or can Zoro come back and win this?
Yeah, and it looks good. It looks good for him at this point. And he seems calm, collected, so it looks like he's got every chance of finishing this off. Obviously, playing against Zoro is going to be hard for him, though, and I'm sure Zoro will have other ideas. And I'm excited to see if he can do it. I'd like it to go to 2-2 for the final game. Would be nice.
One thing we mentioned earlier in the 3rd and 4th place match was that we saw exactly it happen with Magic Quinn coming back against Lovely Chook, is that usually when a player is up 2-0 or 2-1, it's the Druid that's remaining and has to struggle to find that last win. But Zhangbo in that first game was able to win with his Druid, so now only has the Shaman left, which typically can pick up a win, though occasionally we've seen it falter in the past. So we'll see if Zoro can pick up 2 wins in a row here.
Well, this opening hand seems pretty good. Do you keep this abusive? I think I do, just to fix your curve.
Right, and even if you pick up a 1-drop anyway to supplant it, it's still going to be obviously useful in the future. So nice to have that in hand. Obviously now he's going to go with that Leopard Gnome, if not something else. I was trying to maybe call that Tunnel Trog, but didn't happen. And yeah, Leopard Gnome right off the bat, really nice to have all these minions in the hand for Zhangbo, because having these minions now means he draws into his burst later.
Yeah, and Zoro's going to have that eternal question of, so you're playing against really aggressive deck. Do I want to just take time out to tap, or do I want to start using my wild growth? And obviously he kills here. Next turn he will wild growth, and then he'll have nothing to do unless he top decks something. So this could get really bleak for him. But it has to, because as the Shaman, you need to be enough in front, because the Druid's going to come back fast with taunts and stuff from about turn 3, turn 4 onwards.
By the way, I think this was a slight misplay here from Zoro. He saw the abusive and the Totem Golem kept in hand, and then he took a risk saying that if I kill your Leopard Gnome, sometimes the Shaman doesn't have anything to play on 2. But seeing your opponent keep 2 cards and then pick up the Leopard Gnome off the right-hand side is very unlikely for that to be the case.
Yeah, especially, I mean, the deck just doesn't have things that cost more than 3, and he's not going to keep those. So
Exactly.
that's a really good spot there, and definitely something he could have picked up on there.
Wow, going to go for the cycle here with his Wrath. Wants to get out this Wild Growth so he can just really ramp up into later cards here.
Yeah, that's going to stand him in good stead actually with the Sylvanas, with the 4/6, with he has Harrison ready for this Doomhammer, and
But is it going to be too late though? You play the Doomhammer. I mean, once Zhangbo plays the Doomhammer, he's going to do a ton of damage by that point. And then, Harrison puts in the museum, draws a bunch of cards, but by then you're really low on health.
yeah, he does have the Ancient to get 5 back with. I think this is going to be really close. Sherman's going to have to do that thing that it does where it just keeps hitting you in the face and ignoring everything, but it may come down to a crackle roll or something.
Can Zhangbo wait for the Doomhammer until next turn and just play the Rockbiter? You see him thinking about it. I mean, most players would just play it out, and he's saying, "Yeah, I can't overthink this. Just gonna play it out here." But we'll get pretty much punished right now.
He's going to. I think the situation there is if I don't do it now, it only gets worse from here on in.
Right.
That's the mindset I feel.
It was either that or Hero Power Pass, and if your opponent doesn't have Harrison in hand, then everyone at home is basically wondering, what are you doing? Why don't you play it out? But yeah, going to be very difficult. You saw the reaction there from Zhangbo when that Harrison came out, and this is what happens when you draw a bunch of cards with Druid, right? You get that innervate, and things.
He still has a chunk of damage in hand though. This Druid's hero power is actually relevant in this match as well.
Right.
The fact you gain that one piece of armor that everyone forgets happens because it's not what you're trying to do is actually like massive here. It just buys him an extra little bit of time to be able to Ancient later.
That totem is not going to be very helpful. The Flame Tongue totem, speaking of which.
How often do you see a Druid overdrawing? Wow.
Twice in a row, right? And there's a couple of taunts. I imagine you go for double taunt here. I guess you don't, work any hero power in that case. But yeah, I think you just go for double taunt here, and then the next turn you can go for healing plus hero power, and that should set you up pretty well.
He probably just has to add up whether any combination of Crackle, and Rockbiter can kill him. It may be a thing he wants to play around. He's got to work out how far ahead he thinks he is if he's going to go with that line.
Right, but usually you play out the taunts first. If your opponent has, Lava Burst, stuff like that, then, well played. But, I mean, your opponent only has 5 mana right here, so it's very difficult for him to really do anything. And I do like this play very much. Just put 2 taunt minions in the field. Very unlikely that he has double silence here. And, yeah, not only that, it's a massive board, and you get to heal the following turn.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't lose to any combination of cards with that lot going on. Double Crackle being 12, and he hasn't got enough to roll to even get the air totem, so...
Ooh, this is big. Can Zoro hold off lethal here? I mean, obviously he can heal himself. He doesn't have lethal on the board, or doesn't have lethal in hand, I should say. He would if he had, picked up a Savage Roar there, but goes up to 16. Now, what can Zhangbo do here? He has the Lava Burst, obviously, and the Crackle, which could go for 6, which would be 5 damage off lethal, which means that this is looking really bad. Now that I've thought of...
Yeah, and the Harrison's done double duty here because he's made the Ancient of Law a straight-up healing machine, where it normally ends up having to heal, but you quite often don't want to because you're low on cards. So Harrison's drawing those cards, as well as just taking away the biggest threat in the deck, has also made sure that the Ancient of Law is happy to do its job and just heal face, and everything's functioning nicely.
Right.
There doesn't seem to be a way, but I mean, top decking Crackle into something like Silence.
Well, that's probably going to be game, right? There's 17 damage on board. He's dead on board, actually.
Yeah.
So he's
It's
actually dead
and
just
everything
here.
as well.
Exactly. So Zoro's going to take game number 4 and tie up this series. Zhangbo, in fact, going to wait until he sees the charge through the club, but he was actually dead to hero power. Anyways, we are going to go to game 5, and it's Paladin against Shaman, a classic matchup of hated decks here. And we will see who can take it for the $23,000. You can see both players are definitely stressed out about this and definitely want to take this championship.
Yeah, and it's an interesting matchup. I think that at the top level, I think the Paladin is a slight favourite, personally. But it's certainly not any sort of walkover, and it can just roll over and die if it gets a bad draw. It seems to me to be all about who curves out, as a lot of Hearthstone is, but this particular matchup seems to be really who curves out best, and Paladin curves out slightly better on average because there's no overload.
Exactly, and it's kind of like the Zoo versus Shaman matchup that that matchup that I've gone over so many times in this Gold series, where whoever gets the early game, if the Paladin gets the early game in this instance, then they're able to use their board presence to obviously deal more damage. Because once you have a board, all that damage costs 0 mana, guys. And if you're racing against a Shaman, even though they do a lot of damage, it costs mana for them to do so every single turn. However, on the other hand, if Shaman's able to get the early board, get that extra damage into the face, then that extra burst equals death. So that's going to be obviously why the early game matters so much.
Yeah, and the Paladin has a couple of naughty things he can do with things like Noble Sacrifice, just to say, that's 3 damage I'm not taking from your 3/4, and so on, and that all adds up as well. So against most things, the secrets are a bit of a liability. Yeah, as we see him thinking about that now. Deciding he'd rather just not have 2 of them in his opening hand, so getting rid of the Noble Sack in case he draws another one, I suspect, here. But it is a thing that you could do with your secrets, and they're nowhere near the liability they are against other decks here.
I'm slightly surprised that we didn't see Zhangbo keep the Flame Tongue Totem, considering his hand right here. He could definitely use it with the fact that he's going to be able to get the board somewhat handily. But I suppose it's too risky. He also got rid of the Argent Horse Rider, which would have been pretty useful for taking out something like a Knife Juggler in the future. But looks like he's going to have this going for him. Does have the Rock Biter. I mean, obviously it's useful if you have, like a Knife Juggler. Or sorry, I'm getting my words mixed up. If he has the Doom Hammer later.
And the Horse Rider is actually really good at taking down mini bots and things like that as well with that Divine Shield. So
right. But what I was going to say is he can, right now, Zhangbo can coin into the Feral Spirit, and then from there he can use the 1 mana with a Rock Biter to take something out. And like I said, you see people kind of saving it for the Doom Hammer, but it can be very useful for early removal as well.
Yeah, coining into these Feral Spirits is going to be actually really nice for him here. Wait, okay.
He didn't want an Revenge going off here.
Yeah.
And even a Redemption is a bit annoying, and as you can see, the Redemption in hand, so Zoro would have been able to buff up these 2 ladies again were that to happen.
Yeah, this is going to be a really brutal match, whichever way it goes here. It's so much damage going into the face of both players. And now can he plan around the Avenger, or does he just go for it? He's got 5 on board.
I mean, he has a kill on whatever gets avenged, right? We do know that it's actually not avenged, but now that decision to not kill one of the Secret Keepers is kind of hurting him here. A little bit. Because I guess the second Secret Keeper would have been a 3/4 and would have taken out one of the Feral Spirits anyway, but the second one would have lived. It would have been kind of a similar situation right now. We would have had 2/2 as well as a 3/2, but nothing else. So actually just going to hit the face. So,
I think he's made his decision here. Like this is a turn where he just sat there and goes, right, I'm going to spend my whole 70 seconds or near enough. Am I just going to go face the whole game and see what happens and ride it out, or am I going to play who's the aggro, who's the control? I'm the aggro, I'm going to hit you in the face. Let's see what happens.
Right, none of these trades were great anyway, and it's not like Zoro's going to get any great trades by Zhangbo doing it this way. And so Zhangbo said, well, if you're going to get the same trades that I would have done anyway, I might as well just hit the face.
Yeah, and he'll have counted his damage at that point as well and realised that he can just get so much damage in.
Do you Rock Biter here?
Do I have Rock Biter here?
Because if there's a taunt that comes up, you might not be able to hit the face directly from here on out. And yeah, he's going to go for the Rock Biter.
Nice.
Hits his opponent for 8 here. And basically he can win with a good Crackle.
Yeah, so the Rock Biter is really clever there. Good call. So that anything like a Sludge Belcher comes out, or a Noble Sacrifice, or whatever. That's 3 damage more that he's managed to get through, for sure. And we've got some sort of Shredder maths there, so it's 2.3% chance to ruin Zhangbo's
this is
day.
really bad for Zoro here. This 3 damage is going to continue to hit the face. I think this is game over. He cannot stop it.
And that's amazing. Like he made the plan 2 turns ago that he was just going to go face.
Wow.
Worked out how much damage he had, and he's going to win the game.
Zoro's going to take forever to try to clear the board here and see what he can do, but he doesn't have a Lotheb, and Zhangbo, after this all plays out, is going to be your winner. The Cinderella Man is going to take the Gold Series Finals, your Xi'an winner, again, I've mentioned this 1,000 times, but it bears repeating. Every single Gold Series winner flamed out except for this guy. He proved he is not a fluke, and he is going to be your champion after this all plays out. Just going through the motions right now.
And this is a game that a lot of people would have lost. Like, he sat there and he's kept cool and worked out how to make sure he wins this matchup, because it's easy when you watch it. It's the good aggro players make it look easy. You go, oh yeah, well, he just hit him in the face all the time. But he had a couple of serious decisions to make there on turns 3 and 4 as to, can I just hit him in the face all the time, or do I need to control this game? And yeah, so he took the time, worked out his numbers, and there you go. The Cinderella story is the winner of this. Maybe he'll get a team now as well.
Maybe someone will pick up good student Zhangbo here. And as you can see, very reserved in his celebration. Zoro falls short once again. Was the finalist of the China Championship. Was a finalist here again. Tiller looks a bit disappointed as well. Obviously, the basically the captain slash leader of Celestial there. Looks like he's taking it pretty well since he has his plushies to keep him company. But yeah, once again, congratulations to Zhangbo. I'm actually a bit disappointed he didn't go for the yellow crackle there, just to put the finishing touches. But
you do that on your second tournament, right? You win your first tournament because you see the win. You do not want to press anything that you shouldn't. Just get it in the books.
You misclick twice. There's all the money going over to Zhangbo, 150,000 yuan. I don't think that really means anything. It's just basically Monopoly money. Just a fun little way to basically put everything in graphics. And yeah, very well played by him.
Awesome to see as well, because if he'd lost in the quarterfinals, they'd have bunched him in with the other Gold Series winners and said, well, they've all done kind of badly apart from this one guy who got to the quarterfinals, but somebody's bound to because of luck or whatever. But now he's gone on to win it. He's set himself apart from sort of the stereotype, if you like, and now he's like, yeah, look at me, I can do this. And
it's one thing to, I mean, a lot of people will probably look at this and say, he brought Shaman, he brought Druid. I mean, how good could he be, right? He brought Zoo, but his decks really made a lot of sense. And I'm just going to actually unmute this so we can hear a bit of the ceremony here for you guys.
And you did point out earlier that he didn't just play. He's in the round of 16, which is the round where you had a lot more leeway to take on an opponent. He played Control.
Yeah, he played Control in the round of 16. Actually a bit loud, sorry about that.
So he can do it. He has won a match in this tournament where he did have a totally different setup. He's capable of playing everything. He just chose what he felt was right rather than just aggroing his way to victory, which is what some people obviously like to believe.
He also brought aggro Druid to the group stages, so he switched up his Druid as well, played a wide variety of decks. I think the one constant was that he played Patron Warrior, but other than that, he brought his own, flair, his own flavor of Zoo lock as well, with the enhanced Mechanos that helped him definitely in a lot of his matches. It's really cool to see overall. And, Hearthstone, it's not just a game of in-game skill, it's a game of, being able to bring the best lineups possible. And basically, he was never in trouble this entire tournament. Got out of his group #1. This entire time, his lineup has really propelled him to victory.
Yeah, and that doesn't just happen by chance. It happens by a lot of hard work and thought and planning. You have to balance the lineups with the decks you're comfortable with the decks you think other people are playing. You have to then be comfortable with as much as possible to give yourself more choice. And again, you say he's played different things in each stage of the tournament, so he's obviously comfortable with a lot of things, which has allowed him to make the right choices with his planning and get those lineups that he wanted.
All right, we have the ceremony going down here, and that is the trophy. Let's see if he does go for the Hearthstone. But yeah, Zhangbo this entire time, by the way, has been very reserved in all of his celebrations, so very stoic. And just holding it up there. I suppose the presenter said to hold it up, but there's Hamilton.
You get into a zone when you're playing a tournament like that. At whatever level, if you're playing your best Hearthstone, whatever level you play at, you get into the zone where the real world doesn't get into you, it doesn't infiltrate what you're doing, and it may take him a minute just to go, oh, I just won this. He's probably still thinking about Hearthstone cards right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to kind of internalize the fact that he just won $23,000. Most likely, I think that means he took the money, right, since he has the box in his hand?
That's what I'm guessing.
Well, I mean,
yes.
they
Oh my God,
do
Shrink.
the ceremony.
Shrink's alive.
He lives.
Alright.
Well, I mean, they will give him the Hearthstone just for the ceremony, but he will pick the money or the Hearthstone later. So.
Okay. Well, that is
And,
it for the Gold Series.
And